So I've taken everything out of the box and laid them out on the table, and also all of the components that were inside of the non-see-through anti-static Ziploc plastic bags, and I started fooling around with them to see where everything goes. So let's take a look at the frame first. It is a True X frame, 115 millimeter in size, 3 millimeter in thickness, and there's some protrusions coming out. So we have this hammer-like protrusion coming out, and that is the rear of the quadcopter. That'll be the front, this will be the left side, and this will be the right side. It doesn't matter if you flip it over, it is identical. So in the middle, we have a couple of slits, and that is for your battery strap, and we have the 20 by 20 millimeter mounting holes. And here's a take a look at the ESCs. It is a 20 amp Holley S 4-in-1 D-Shot ESCs, and although we have some pads to solder on the motor wires, the motors that we are given have plug and play connectors, so no soldering required for the motor wires. You still, however, have to solder on the XT30 battery cable right there, and we are also given this 25 volt 150 microfarad Rubicon capacitor that also needs to be soldered on, probably right on top of the battery cables. Here's a take a look at the flight controller, and I've already attached all of the wiring harness to it already. So this is for the receiver, and here's the VTX, here's the camera, and here is the wiring harness to connect the flight controller to the ESC. And we have an open port here that is probably for the buzzer, and we got 3 pads, and that is for the LED light fixture. Now on this build, we are not given the buzzer apparatus nor the LED light fixture, so I'm just going to leave it just the way it is. Now on this flight controller, there's a little arrow, and you can see the little arrow right there. So that'll be the front of the flight board. So this flight board has a 45-degree pre-adjusted angle to it. And also, if you zoom in right next to the connector for the receiver, there's going to be 3 tiny little pads. So if you bridge the 2 left pads, that'll be for the S-bus receiver. And if you bridge the 2 right pads, that'll be for the PPM receiver. I've already bridged the left 2 pads, so I'm going to be using the S-bus receiver. Now, here's a take a look at the canopy. It is not a 3D printed canopy. It is a molded canopy, and it is really, really hard, very strong plastic, so it's going to help secure all of these sensitive components. So we're going to mount the FPV camera. That's the hole for the FPV camera. FPV camera is going to go right here. There's a little platform in the rear that'll probably be for the VTX. And if you look on the bottom, there's 3 holes in a triangular shape. So that'll correspond to the 3 holes on the flight control board. So you're going to mount the flight control board on the bottom of the canopy, and it is going to go just like this here. So all of the components like the camera and the VTX are going to be mounted on here, as well as the receiver. And once you got all that mounted, and once you got the ESC mounted onto the frame, what you're going to do is place the canopy right on top and mount it together using some longer screw they provide you with and longer standoff. So the triangular formation on the canopy will correspond to the triangular shaped protrusion on the frame. So that's going to be a pretty easy build, so not much soldering required at all. Everything is just kind of plug and play. You just need to manipulate everything and get it fixed in. So first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount the 4-in-1 ESC to the frame, and also all of the motors. I'm going to connect it to the plug and play connectors and mount them onto each of the arms. And then we'll move on to the canopy and the flight control board. Okay, so the bottom half is just about done. We got the ESC bolted down. We got the capacitor and the XT30 battery cable soldered on. We got all of the motors connected, plug and play, and all of the motors screwed on 4 screws on each of the motor. So basically the bottom half of the quadcopter is done. So let's move on to the top half of the quadcopter. Oh, and this is the battery strap that it comes with. It's a very nice battery strap. The Velcro is pretty sticky. It's a little bit thick, so when you form it around the battery, it's a little bit loose. So I ended up putting one of my own. This one is a Velcro brand, very thin battery strap, and it is pretty sticky as well. And since it's thin, it wraps around the battery and forms around the battery a little bit better. Now this build did not come with one of those anti-slip battery pads. So this is a leftover piece from a bigger quadcopter, 5-incher. I just chunked off a little piece at the end because it didn't need that length. So this will fit on here just right. All right, guys, so here is the canopy. It is somewhat assembled. So I got the flight controller, and there's the 3 screws to hold it down. And also I've added an XM receiver. It is the smallest receiver that I have. It fits inside of this canopy cavity just right. I can kind of stick it in and rotate it so it goes in like this. So I got the 1 antenna coming out because XM just has 1 antenna. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to put an XM Plus receiver inside there. Because XM Plus receiver is slightly bigger, and if you have a DSM or FlySky, I'm not sure about those type of receivers, but there is a lot of space in between the flight controller and the ESC when you put this thing together. So you might want to put a little bit bigger receiver and double side sticky tape it on the bottom of the flight control board. That'll be a good spot as well. But I've selected to put it inside of this cavity. So I'm going to route the receiver antenna through that little hole. And I've put a zip tie using those 2 holes. It's staggered, but it does receive a zip tie pretty well. And the zip tie will go up like in a 45-degree angle fashion. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to put any tape or anything. It fits in there pretty snugly, so I'm just going to leave it in there. Perhaps I might put a little piece of double-sided sticky tape on the bottom and push it down once I get it fully inside there. So the VTX is going to be sitting on this little platform. Now if you look at the product page, the VTX is mounted just like this. I don't know how they got it on there. I don't see any zip ties or anything like that. Well, if you look on the side here, there's a hole right here, and it goes right through to the other side hole. So when you put the VTX on there, you can put a zip tie and wrap it around and secure it down. But as you can see, there's wiring on the bottom of the VTX. So when you put the VTX on here, the wires are going to be in the way, sort of. So you're going to have to put a lot of double-sided sticky tape so that you have a little cushion to safeguard the wires. And I'm not sure about positioning it this way because the antenna is just flapping in the back and it's not tied down. So one of the arms is right here and the propeller will be spinning. This might get a prop strike, you know, because there's air force pulling it down as well, and if you hit something, it will definitely get a prop strike. So I'm thinking about putting it sideways like this, because if you look on the bottom, there's the wires. If you push the wires to one side like that, you can kind of avoid the platform. So you can put some double-sided sticky tape and raise it a little bit so it is nice and flat. And the antenna can be secured with another zip tie. I can put another zip tie right here and then sort of secure the antenna and heat shrink it onto the zip tie. That'll make a little V formation so they won't be bothering each other. So that might work for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And also the FPV camera was mounted using the front hole with the provided screw and on the other side as well. So it's got a pretty good movement, I believe up to like 45-degree angle up tilt. So that's just about it for the canopy. So I'm going to go ahead and secure all this down and then move on to the next step. All right, so just about done with the canopy. So I did end up shrink wrapping the receiver antenna to that one zip tie that I placed earlier. It fits on there pretty good. I left it relatively long because this is an XM receiver, so I only have one antenna. So I wanted to get the full benefit of its length. And what I ended up doing with the VTX is I did double side sticky tape it to that platform, but I did put a zip tie across it, and I found that the zip tie was sticking out just right at the right spot, so I can heat shrink the VTX antenna to it, just a little band to hold it in place. Instead of putting a zip tie right here, I did try it. As you can see, there's a little marking that I cut the zip tie off. What I had to do was I had to kind of bend the VTX antenna to form to fit where the zip tie was coming out, and that wasn't looking too hot. So, and the VTX had to move up towards the canopy more. So this way it's more natural. It's just coming out the side where it's supposed to, and it is just heat shrink to hold it in place with that zip tie that's holding down the VTX. So that is just about it, guys. This is ready to be placed on the frame. So I have the wiring harness for the ESC, so I just got to plug that in and hide the wires in between. So here's the frame ready to receive the canopy. So I've already placed the screws on that protrusion, and this is the little standoff that they provide you with. So what I've done was I placed the nut to hold the screw down, so it actually will lengthen this standoff, and this standoff is just about the right length now. So if I didn't put this screw right here, then I'm going to have to cut an additional piece of this standoff, and it's a rubber standoff, and they do provide you with a bunch of rubber standoffs, so that is really nice. And look at all the extra screws and nuts they provide you with, so you end up having some extra stuff. So that's how it's going to go, and the canopy is just going to go right here, and I'm just going to use the nut to hold it down. So basically I'm just about done, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and place this canopy on here, and the next step will be probably to go in beta flight and configure this thing so I can go ahead and see if all the motors are spinning the correct way and stuff like that. All right, so let's move on to the next step. All right, so we got the canopy mounted onto the frame. So as you can see, it is just the right length, and we do have a lot of space in between the flight controller and the ESC, so you could put a receiver in between there as well. So this rubber standoff is sort of acting like a soft mounting for the whole canopy, and thus the flight controller that's inside of it. So looking pretty nice, and it's just about done. So look in the back of the canopy, there's a little slit, so you can actually push in the capacitor in there. So there's a little spot for the capacitor. I'm just going to leave it sticking out straight. And also that hammer-like protrusion that's coming out the rear, well, that's where you zip tie the battery cables to it. And I wasn't quite satisfied with it, so I ended up putting another zip tie on the rear arms. So once you install the battery on here and you are ready to go, and just love this battery strap because you can just kind of form it to whatever you want, the size of the battery, and stick it on. So when I connect the battery cable to the XT30, it has somewhere to hold on to, so the cable won't be flapping up and down and perhaps hit the props. So that is just about it, guys. We are just about done. So the next step would be to go into beta flight and configure all of the modes and make sure that the motors are spinning the correct way. Okay, so I came across a little obstacle trying to connect the micro USB cable to the micro USB port on the flight controller. So let me go ahead and zoom in. There's the micro USB port on the flight controller. And right next to it right here, there's the standoff screw that was sticking up a little bit from the ESC standoff. So that was obstructing the pathway to connect to the micro USB port. So I had to open up the canopy and then snip off that little extra thread screw coming out of it. So at the same time, I just snipped off all 4 of them. And now we are able to connect. And they do provide you with this 90-degree angle micro USB adapter. So you can go ahead and place this thing right in there and plug it in, because some of the USB connector, the handle for it is kind of large, and to make it fit in there is pretty difficult. So they provide you with this nice 90-degree angle one. Now you can connect your cable directly onto this adapter. All right, so now let's go into a beta flight. Okay, so here we are in beta flight. So let's go ahead and connect the USB cable. And there we go. Here we are on the setups page, but first let's take a look and see which beta flight version we are on. We are on 3.5.5, and that is dated January of 2019, and the board is Maytech F411. We'll leave it just like that, 3.5.5, and check it out with that version. So here in the setups tab, you want to calibrate the accelerometer, place the quadcopter on a flat level surface, and there we go. Next is the ports tab. So we got serial RX on UART1, and we got TBS Smart Audio selected on UART2. Awesome. Next up, configurations tab. DShot 600 is already selected, and idle is set to 4.5. Usually I up it to 6, but we'll just check it out on 4.5. And the board alignment has all 0 degrees on here, so the flight controller board is preset to that angle of 45 degrees. So let's see, gyro update frequency, I'm going to lower it down to 4 kilohertz. PID loop frequency, I'm going to up it to 4 kilohertz. That should be more than enough. And accelerometer is turned on. Arming is set to 25 degrees. I'm going to up it to 180. And we'll type in a craft name. It'll be Tyro89. There we go. And serial based receiver is selected, and S-bus is already selected, so we don't have to change that. Soft serials turned on. I don't need that. Telemetry is turned on. I don't need that. OSD, anti-gravity, and dynamic filter is all turned on. And we're going to use the beacon of the ESC since we don't have a buzzer. And everything else is turned on. All right. Save and reboot. And let's go back to configurations tab and make sure that all of the changes have been made and confirm it. Let's go to power and battery. Here I'd like to lower down the minimum cell voltage to 3.1, warning cell voltage to 3.2. Hit save. And also enable expert mode, so it'll bring up the fail-safe tab here, and looks like everything is set up correctly, but I'm going to go ahead and set the throttle to hold and save and reboot. Okay, next up, PID tuning page, and looks like it's kind of a preset PID values. So let's go to profile 2. Now these are beta flight default, looks like. Profile 3, yeah, those are beta flight default. So profile 1 has been preset by the factory to this PID setting. So let's check out the rate setting. Whoa, 1.2, 1.2, 1.3, 0.73 on the super, 0.73 on the supers. Okay, so we'll fly it and check it out with these rates here. If it's too fast, then I'll lower it down. And here are the default filter settings. So that is all good. So let's go to the receivers tab. And here I need to turn on my transmitter. Oh, hey, there we go. We don't need to connect a battery for this. So we got throttle, rudder, pitch, and roll. And we also have RSSI on auxiliary 12. So let's go to the RSSI selector and choose auxiliary 12. We already have set to TAER. And here what I like to do is put the RC deadband up to about 2, and also the yaw deadband, I like to put it up to 2, and looks like the quadcopter is dead still. Alright, so we're going to hit save. Let me check out the switches first. Auxiliary switches. Auxiliary 1, 2, and 3. Alright, they're all responding, so hit save. Okay, so let's go into the modes tab. And looks like they only have selected 2 auxiliary switches here, so, and hide unused modes. Okay, let me turn that off so it'll bring up all of the rest of the switches. So arming, I have it set to auxiliary 1 and at the top of the switch, so put the slider to the top of the switch. Angle mode, I have it on auxiliary 2, and angle mode would be at the bottom of the switch, so we'll put the slider to the bottom. And I don't use horizon, and here's the beeper. I have it set to auxiliary 3 and at the top of the switch, so slide it all the way to the right. And also air mode is selected on auxiliary 2, and here's air mode, so all the way to the top of the switch. And those are the only switches that I have, so I'm going to hit save and then go all the way up. Let me hit that hide unused mode. So there you go, all of the modes have been selected. Great. So just for safety's sake, hit save again, and let's go on over to the motors tab. Here is where you can do the direction of the motors. Click this and power it up with a battery, and then you can go ahead and use the sliders to power up each of the motors. But I'm going to do this on the outside, so I'm just going to skip this part in Betaflight and move on over to OSD. So here you can select what you want to see on your on-screen display. Okay, so we got battery average cell voltage, current draw, current battery usage, battery voltage, turn that on. Craft name, turn that on. Fly mode, turn that on. And RSSI, turn that on. Throttle position, timer 2, and VTX channel. And warning is already selected. So check it out. It's all set for me because I've done it once before. So perfect. Okay. So flight statistics. I'll turn that off. Battery mAh used, turn that off. Battery voltage, I'll turn that on. Battery voltage at the end, turn that on. Battery voltage minimum, I'll leave that on. Black box, I'll turn that off. Black box usage, I'll turn that off. RSSI minimum and speed, turn it off, and timer 2, leave it on. And that is basically it, guys. And video format is selected to auto. That's what I normally put it on. Alright, so hit save. And that is just about it. So let's go back to the setups page here. Okay, RSSI has been selected, but there's no RSSI value showing up on the setup page. So go back to receiver page, and here's the RSSI, and auxiliary 12 is selected, but we have no readout. So let's go to CLI and type in set space RSSI and hit enter. That'll bring up all of the RSSI values, and looks like it's all correct. So sometimes you just need to bring this up in CLI and just exit out and hit enter, and it'll reboot. And then see, check it out, we got RSSI value now, so we will have RSSI value on our on-screen display. Alright, so that is everything I do in Betaflight. So let's go and check out and see if the motors are spinning the correct direction. Okay, motor direction time. Turning on the transmitter and connecting the battery. Okay, arming. So here's motor number 1. Oh, motor number 1 is spinning the wrong way. Motor number 2 spinning the wrong way. Motor number 3 is spinning the correct way. And motor number 4 spinning the correct way. So motor number 1 and motor number 2 needs to be reversed. Okay, so here we are in BL Heli S. Let's go ahead and connect the craft. Okay, so connect, and let's go ahead and plug in the battery. And hit read setup. And here we are. So it was motor number 1 and motor number 2 that needed to be reversed. So motor number 1 reversed, motor number 2 reversed, and then hit right setup. Okay, done. That is all you need to do here, and disconnect. Yep, the ESCs have sung via the beacon, so we are completely done. Okay, let's double check on the motor direction now. Okay, arming. Yep. All the motors are spinning the correct way. So putting the final screw on all of the props, tightening it up. Right, so all of the props have been installed. So one thing left to do is see if this thing hovers. All right, so here we go with the hover test. Arming. Very successful hovering. It is not flipping over, which is always a good sign. Got a 3S battery on here. 650 milliamps, so it's a little heavy. Nice. Alright, there you go guys. Successful hover. successful build. And that is just about it for this video. So if you have any questions, comment down below. Next video I'll do a performance testing on this thing and some free flying as well. Alright, so that is it for now for the Eachine Tyro89. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and have a great day, and we'll see you again next time.